via our email at events@ahead.ie. So Sue, I'm going to take it over to you. Great.
Caught out by mute again.
I feel like there's going to be a t-shirt industry kind of, doing the you're on mute slogan on the t-shirt.
Thanks, Trevor. So yeah, as Trevor said, I'm Sue. I'm the Assistive Technology Specialist in UCD, and I'm just going to share my screen. So basically, what I wanted to chat about today, and it probably follows on somewhat from the earlier presentation, it's about kind of individualized AT. So choosing the assistive technology based very much on the needs of the student and the circumstances they're in, their learning preferences, the needs of the course that they're in. And what I'd like to do basically is I've cherry picked a very small few tools that I'd like to demo or highlight that are useful, but with each of them, there's always probably an alternative that can be offered as well. So it's really about that. So basically, we do a face-to-face needs assessment with our students. So as the assistive technology officer, I see students who have physical or sensory disabilities, and the idea with that is that they would tend to have maybe more bespoke assistive technology needs. But the rest of my team then will see students in different categories of disability, and they'll refer them on for assistive technologies. So initially we would just email out what we have suggested for those students and information on how to access that. But they can contact me then at any time if they want to come in for specific training in a tool, if they want to review the tools that they've been offered, or if at any point in the year they want to have a chat about it. So that's the way we kind of do it. But when I talk about an individualized AT service, excuse me, what I mean really is, say previously a number of years ago, for example, anybody who has or who had dyslexia would probably have been given Read and Write Gold, which you may be familiar with. So that's a very kind of standard assistive technology tool. It's basically a comprehensive literacy support tool. Has a big range of functions. So they'd have been given that, and then they'd have probably been given the LiveScribe pen, which is the pen that records audio and you can take notes and it links the notes and the audio together. So they would have been the two kind of stock tools that would have been offered. So what I've tried to do really is move away from that a little bit, because we were getting feedback that Read and Write Gold, a lot of the functionality wasn't being used. It's a kind of a toolbar that sits across the top of your laptop screen, and because there was maybe so many bells and whistles, basically people weren't maybe tending to use it. So I'm not saying it's not suitable for anybody. There are some students specifically, and it really works well for them. But rather than say, oh, you have this particular disability, here's the tool for you, what we try and do now is inform students of basically a list of text-to-speech tools and similar things like that, and say, well, what is it that you need it for? What exactly are your needs? And then, well, here are a few of the options. And if it's one of the premium kind of options that needs to be purchased, please come back to me and we'll provide that for you. But maybe have a look at these, at the whole range first. If you want to be able to, say, convert a PDF to MP3, this is a tool that can do that. If you tend to be given a lot of content in inaccessible PDF form and you need to be able to convert that to something more accessible and create a tagged PDF, here's the tool that can do that, and so on. So we try and kind of inform the students and let them have a bit of input into what was going to suit them best. So in terms of note taking, like I say, in the past, maybe everybody would have received a LiveScribe, and the LiveScribes are fantastic. But now what we tend to do is say, well, do you tend to handwrite your notes in class, or are you bringing in your laptop anyway and doing everything on your laptop? And if they are, then it makes more sense to get a tool that they can use in that space as such, because they're much more likely to adopt using it and keep using it if it ties in with their current kind of workflow, rather than have their laptop there and then have pen and paper separate to that. So what we kind of opted for now, a lot of the time, is Glean, which is a note-taking and audio recording application. So Glean is made by Sonocent, and they used to make a tool called Audio Note Taker. And what they did was they got all of the feedback from about audio note taker, and they've created this kind of stripped down version. So when I first saw it, I thought, well, it doesn't have half the functionality of audio note taker, but actually it really does. They've built it up a lot, and there's lots of functionality, but the interface is much simpler. So I'm going to demo that one for you first of all. So if we go in here, this is what your kind of dashboard looks like. So obviously I've just used this for lots of tests, so it doesn't, just lots of untitled events there. But basically you have this collection section over here, which is where you can create folders effectively. So a student could go in, they could create a separate folder for, say, every module. And then when they record an event or a new class, that can be put into that folder. And then you have a tasks list here. So you'll see the relevance of that in a moment. So basically, once you go into, once you're preparing to go into a new class, you go to new event, you can name the event. And the idea would be that before the class takes place, you can import your slides. So this works on the desktop version, but not on the app version. So if a student does want to record on their phone in class, they would need to go in and import their slides previously. So obviously this means that they ideally would have their slides in advance, and that would be kind of a best practice thing anyway, that you would ask faculty that they have all of the slides up on, say, on the VLE in advance of the class. And that's beneficial for a student who just wants to be able to look over them and kind of activates all the prior knowledge and everything before they go into the classroom situation. So ideally those slides would be there. Now, if they're not there, you can obviously go in and record and upload your slides afterwards. And there is a way then to sync it up. So I will just show you basically what it looks like, and that will make a bit more sense. So we have our slides here. You've got your notes will appear here, and then the audio will be here. So I'm going to click record, and you can see that you have the option. So here we'll use microphone, but you have the option to just do the system audio if you're watching an online class. And then you also have both. You can do a combined thing as well. So you'll see that the audio starts to appear over here, and it kind of shows in little chunks as I pause. And you can hide this section if you want, if you kind of want a bit less distraction and you just want your slides and you just want your notes side by side, you can hide this. But basically, as you're listening, then you can make note of certain things, and you'll see that the little dot shows up here where I have placed the note. So, and the nice thing about this is, as soon as you start to type into this box, the note will start at that point. So no matter how long I'm writing in the box, you don't have to kind of rush through and say, okay, well, I need to take these notes, or it's going to, you know, this note will appear much further down in the audio. It'll go from where I first started typing. And the other options around that are, so you can go with straightforward notes, or you can just use these shortcuts. So this one is to label something as important. You can place a note with it as well if you like, or you could just use the symbol. And this one then is for review. So if you knew that something needed to be, whether it's that you didn't hear it or you didn't understand it, or you want to review it later for exam or assignment purposes or whatever. In terms of the slides here, so you can, as the lecturer moves through the slides, you can just say post next slide, and you'll see that the slide title and number comes up here, and it comes up in the audio as well. So everything is broken up automatically that way. But the nice thing with this one that wasn't in audio note taker is that if the lecturer ends up jumping around and doing the slides in a different order, you can just navigate through them without changing anything here, and you can say post slide there. And again, it'll come up and you can go back to slide 3 whenever they jump back to it. You can add images as well, and you can import them, or you can search. And it's linked to Bing automatically. Just a little disclaimer there. You can also, has a little Wikipedia entry here. Now I know Wikipedia isn't the most reliable in terms of academic terms, but it's a good starting point. So you can have that there, and then you can have a task as well. So you can post a task like assignment, and that'll have a little checkbox beside it. You can go back to any note that you've written previously, and you can also convert that to a task as well. And the idea is, if we stop the recording there, the idea is then that you can review. So you can either jump into the audio, and the other options around. It will highlight the whole section that symbol or note is relevant to, and you can start to play it back then. And or you can jump into the notes section here and you can play it directly from there. So what we kind of recommend is, that rather than writing a lot of notes during class, because that's often the issue that students have, is that they are so busy taking notes that they then lose track of where they're at. So what we say is focus on listening, focus on marking all those points that are going to be relevant to you, or points that you didn't understand that you want to come back to review. And afterwards then click on all of these points that you've noted. And at that point, you can write your more extensive notes after class. So it's the whole kind of process from reviewing your slides before class, putting them into Glean, recording as you go, and then afterwards doing your more extensive kind of note taking. And they have some tools to support that kind of idea as well. So you've got this focus timer here. And this is obviously good for anyone where concentration and focus might be an issue as part of a specific learning difficulty. You could set yourself 10 to 30 minutes and say, right, I'm just going to focus on expanding on these notes now for the next 30 minutes. The other function they have is, so you have a reading view, and this will produce a more kind of linear note-taking, kind of what you generally used to have if you were writing by hand. So you've got your slide there and you have any written notes that you have added there as well. And you've got the definition. And you can copy these, you can print it to PDF, or you can copy it, you can paste it into, say, a Word document or a Google Doc. And the nice thing is that at the end of the notes, it'll have the link back to this, back to the actual Glean that includes the audio and everything. So sorry, what I didn't mention at the beginning was this is a browser-based tool. So it'll work in any browser, it'll work across all devices, and all the devices will be synced. So it's handy in that way, you don't have to install anything. And
actually, just one question, Sue. So is it app-based as well?
So there is an app as well.
There is an app, sorry, okay, perfect.
Yeah, sorry, there is an app as well, but the one drawback with the app is, like I say, you can't upload your slides within the app. So you do have to open the kind of desktop version, the browser on a desktop or a laptop, upload your slides there, it won't work in the app. But once you go into the app, then you can go into, I think it's, there's a media tab or something like that, and you can download it from there, access it from there, and it'll sync up that way. So let me just check it. Yeah, so that's it really. So you can go back in then and have everything together, organize it, and this is where then you can see your list of tasks right here. You don't even have to jump into the individual Glean things. So I'll just go back to the main presentation. So that's Glean. So we have a site license, and there's an admin panel where you can assign that to a student for a certain length of time. And you can, though, buy individual licenses as well. And I think it's around 100 sterling for an individual license for the year. And then in terms of what I was saying about being able to provide alternatives, there is also Koji would be a free kind of alternative note-taking app. Now it doesn't have the same kind of functionality, but if you had a student who wasn't sure if they really want to have audio recordings of notes, or if you have a student who isn't funded, Koji can be a good alternative to provide in that way. And then you still, like I say, have the live scribe. So we would generally still provide live scribe to someone who prefers to take notes by hand, and that's kind of part of their learning process, or someone who's going to be out on placement where it wouldn't be suitable for them to be using a device. So moving on then to, or is there any questions at this point, Trevor, or will we do those at the end, or what do you think?
Yeah, actually, there's a few questions, one of which is actually about the transferability of Glean to the workplace, because someone has actually said they use it in a work context as well. Okay. And I thought that was a really good point. So it's good to see that, you know, it's got longevity outside of an education context. And then a few people are interested, someone from UL would kind of think about Glean as a new addition to their arsenal of AT. And then, yeah, people seem to be liking, now, see, I would have known the old interface, which was a lot clunkier than this one. So I have to say, I'm enjoying the simpler kind of beautiful way easier to navigate version.
Yeah, they said that they've kind of, even with the text where you enter the text and the shortcuts and everything, that they have tried to emulate a kind of social media thing that would be very familiar. And you can also, this little symbol here, I forgot to show you that, the lightning symbol, you can turn that on. So it takes out the text entry box and you're left with just the shortcuts, and there's a number that correlates with each of them. So you can literally use like 1 to 6 and do it that way. So it can be even kind of quicker and simpler again. So yeah, that's, and the support is really good with them as well. They're very quick to get back, very personal service as well, which is great.
And actually, so just in terms of students and training them with this, do you find this is an easier tool to get students to adopt to? Say, I suppose that there's different types of AT out there. Some are more complex than others, but this one, does it kind of click with students very quickly, would you say?
Yeah, I think definitely more so than audio note taker. I liked audio note taker to some extent, but it would very much depend. So with audio note taker, one of the key differences was you could color code all the audio, and then you could pull out everything that was a particular color and organize it that way. That kind of works for my brain, but but it was definitely more complicated and it looked more. So this is, it's very, it's clean and it's easy. The fact that it's, again, that it's browser based and syncs across devices easily and that kind of thing. I think the one other advantage with audio note taker was that on the app you could take a photo. So you could take maybe a photo of a whiteboard if it was a more math sciencey based subject, and you could annotate on that. So that was one kind of advantage where we still might offer. Audio note taker is being phased out over the next few years, but at this stage we might still offer that to a student who's in a program of that nature, where they might use that. But then we found students are reluctant to take photos, to stand up with their tablet and take a photo or whatever anyway, even though we all do it in kind of conferences and work situations. There's still a reluctance to do that in class. So it was an advantage, but how much it would be used, I'm not sure. So yeah, I do find students take to this quite well, but it's all about finding, like I had a really interesting chat with one of the students, and she was saying, it's still not working for me. I still feel like I come out and I haven't remembered anything. I'm still trying to write everything down. And we kind of got to the bottom of it. And she said that in school, she would have, anytime she didn't understand anything, she'd have asked a question. And she said, I can't do that in this big lecture hall kind of situation. So I said, well, look, every time you would have asked a question, why don't you use the little review symbol and use that as your kind of starting point when you go to review the work? So, go to that point and say, right, what was the, and even take note of whatever the question would have been. And at that point say, okay, do I need to listen back to the material? Do I need to read something else? Do I need to talk to a friend? And if you still don't have the answer at that stage, you could email the lecturer with your list of questions. But to use that as it's all about them finding the way of using the tool as effectively as possible, I guess.
And that's great too, because actually there's a little bit of chat about, the stress of even note taking and the pressure of note taking. And I suppose, again, some of those, modules or lectures could have like very dense language in it. And this, again, the recording helps students to review, that heavy content, and then in their own time digest that information. So yeah.
And I think it's that safety net as well of, because they're not worrying about taking it all down. I have had students, even with the live scribe, this probably wouldn't be recommended, but he said, I don't actually have to go back and review the notes, because the very act of the fact that I'm listening so kind of actively and just taking notes, the most important points, he said, it's actually just going into my brain from doing that. So because they're not kind of in this fear of I have to take all of this down, it gives them the freedom to just focus in on what's being said and then highlight the bits they need to come back to. So I think it's definitely a really worthwhile tool. So moving on then, I was going to go to, these would be tools specifically for hearing impairment. Now they're transcription tools. Obviously, a human person doing it, PCR, is always more accurate, but these tools are ones that we've come across and we've found them quite good. Now, we'd only be giving these to a small enough cohort of students, because we don't give like full transcription tools for, say, somebody with dyslexia or anything like that, because you can find that having the full transcript can actually be detrimental. Some students do ask about it, because again, it's that safety net thing. If they don't want to miss anything, if they have it all to look back on, they feel that they won't be stuck. But in general, we would opt for the audio with notes for students with a specific learning difficulty, and we would reserve a transcription tool specifically for someone who's deaf or hearing impaired. So Caption Ed is the one I wanted to look at today. So I'll just show you what that looks like. So first of all, there is a browser extension that shows up like this, and you can change the language and you can choose these options that have more specific terminology. If you're a medicine student or physio or so on, or law, and then you can change the font size and the theme and so on. So once you start, then now it's not going to work here. So this is only for online classes. So it'll only record the system audio, this browser extension. It'll show up here and you can download the transcript from there. But I'll show you then the desktop version. So this will work for both face-to-face and online. And there we go. So you can see you've got your options there. You can change the number of lines and the font size and so on. And it just pops up in this neat little box. And I really think this is a paid tool, but I think for an automated tool, I think the accuracy is actually really, really good. So we have the desktop version that will do face-to-face and online. You've got the browser extension just for online that records system audio. And then if I pause that there, you can see that this is your dashboard then. So in the dashboard, you can upload a recording that you already have and have the transcription provided for that. And then you can review anything that you have done previously. So let's jump in here. So you'll see that you've got your transcript here, and they've added a few other functionalities to it quite recently. So you can play the recording over here, and as you play it, you'll see that
I'd like you to start captioning that.
You'll see that the words are all highlighted as they're being said. And again, I found the accuracy with that really good in terms of it staying as it should. You can mark a section of the transcript as important, and then you can copy it over to your notes section. So this is what they've added recently, that you can be looking through your transcript, listening back to it, and you can make notes as you go along. Because like I say, that was kind of the drawback before. And this is quite recent, that you know, beforehand, you would end up just with this massive transcript that you couldn't do a huge amount with. You could copy and paste it maybe into your own notes, but now they have made it much more kind of usable, I suppose, that you can just take out the bits that you need when you're reviewing. But like I say, there are alternatives for that as well. So I really like Caption Ed. That's what I've been recommending, but I do have one student in particular who's deaf, who swears by Otter AI, and obviously he's using it in a classroom situation, like practically more frequently than I am in a kind of test environment. I found that Otter AI, things like that with the syncing of the audio and the transcript when you're listening back would kind of go out of sync and that kind of thing. But I know with the premium versions, it does, it kind of improves the accuracy and stuff greatly. But Otter AI does have a free version. So again, if you had a student who's not funded, you can have up to 6,000 minutes for free. And it's not 6,000 minutes once and then it's done. It's that you have basically 6,000 minutes in your library. So as you delete stuff, you can continue to fill up that 6,000 minutes again. And it can be linked to your calendar as well, which could be useful if it's for a lot of online things and Zooms. It can be linked basically.
Actually, Sue, can I just interrupt? We've got loads of questions coming in now, so I might just try to grab a few of them. So Caroline here has just asked a question about how good is the audio recording, and that might be for both of the applications that we just saw there. So in terms of Glean as well as Caption Ed. So she asked specifically, how close do they have to be in range to maybe the staff member to pick it up, or the lecturer? Would that depend again on the microphone quality of the device being used? And
yeah, it'll be completely down to, so it'll use your system microphone, so it'll be completely down to that. Now you could, I think one of our students did start to use like a Bluetooth microphone, so that you could give that to the lecturer, Bluetooth, and that would be linked with it. We also have little, they're called Samsung Go mics. They're a little USB microphone. They can clip onto the edge of your laptop or to the top of it. Now, again, we would still always recommend, if you're using something like that, the same with Glean, that you'd need to be ideally as near the front as possible. But that will pick it up. That will add a little bit of extra quality as well, because you're not going to give every student, say, kind of a Bluetooth situation. But again, it depends on the lecture halls as well. So we have a massive range of like smaller rooms where you'd certainly need the extra microphone, and then bigger ones where there'd be speakers throughout. So I would tend to say to students, look, go out and see how you find it and see what the audio quality is like. And if there's issues, come back to me. So I haven't had anyone come back really too much around it. But again, unfortunately, where capacity doesn't allow us a huge amount of time, unless a student specifically comes to us with feedback like that. There could be students who drop off and stop using it for those reasons. But actually with Glean, sorry, just to jump back to Glean, in terms of audio quality, they have now added like a click reduction kind of tool and a noise cleanup. And there's 3 or 4 tools that they've added now that really help to improve the audio quality. I'm not sure if there's anything similar in the transcription tools, actually.
That's okay. And just wondering, so another person has asked, is there a Gaeilge option regarding languages? So for transcriptions, I would imagine, so maybe offering that if someone was speaking in Irish and that, I don't.
Not that I know of at this stage. Now I think there is work being done. You might know, Trevor, around increasing interoperability with Irish. Still seems to be quite limited in terms of what we have.
Because I think Trinity had something. I do remember seeing a Trinity website where they had a browser-based.
I think that's gone.
Is it gone? Okay.
I think it was called Auber, was it, or something?
That rings a bell.
Yeah, I think it was, that was good. It had a limit of 1,000 words or something, but I think I went to try it recently, and
don't
quote me on that, but I'm not sure if it was still there. I don't think it was.
And actually, even one person has asked a question. Let's say there's a student waiting on maybe a document to demonstrate that they have a certain disability. Would there be something that you would advise the students to use that they would have access to in the interim? So for example, one thing that comes to mind when it's like captions is, your online Word in Office 365 has a transcribe feature in it. So where there's the dictation option, there's a drop-down menu and there's a transcribe option. So that, at least in an intern to like an intermediary way, could.
And the issue for in UCD anyway with that is, well, like I say, Otter AI is free as well, so that could anyone could have effectively used that. But the issue with that is, and this will depend on your institution, you have to have the accommodation of being allowed to use a recording device. So by rights, students should not be recording unless they have the accommodation to do so. Now I know there's no way to kind of really enforce that, like everyone could be recording without us knowing, but they shouldn't actually be. So if they were obviously using a recording tool, it could be questioned if they didn't have the accommodation.
And another person then has asked the question, how do you go about assessing apps to include in your kind of AT recommendation list? Is that just
so at the moment it's really I suppose for me, in terms of the time that we have to assess them, it's very much about the relationship you have with the supplier, I suppose, and finding out the work that they've done and what research has gone into it. And then I'll kind of trial it myself as best I can. At that stage, I'll try and so for example, this year we rolled out one just as a pilot called Present Pal. And that was one I was really interested in looking at, because we have such a growing number of students. There's a huge growing number in terms of mental health. And then a lot of the time what will go hand in that is like anxiety around presenting. So that was one I wanted to try, and I think we were able to offer that to up to 25 students or something like that. So we tried it that way, got feedback, a couple of surveys either end of it, and we've decided to go now with next year with 50 licenses and see that way. But it's still, it'd be fairly, I suppose, it wouldn't be like a rigorous process. It's just because of the time limit, is that we just try. That's why I kind of go with the options, to be honest. So I don't say, this is the one we're going to roll out, it's brilliant, let's go with it, because different students will like different things. So I'll keep maybe the audio note taker, I'll keep the live scribe, but I'll say, would you like to try Glean? I'll kind of walk them through what it's like and let them go with it. And if it's more at this point about that, they can come back to me at any point if it's not working for them, and we can look at other options. So it's kind of on the ground kind of reason.
And that's it's a good way of working on the fly is good. So that's why it's good having these events, just kind of share different tools and experiences with it. And then just Deirdre here in ahead has just asked a question about the work placement, and sometimes there can be like in the workplace, considerations about using recording tools. So I did ask that question to Caption.ed, like, do they encrypt the information that's being recorded and saved within the account? And the director there did say that it is encrypted. So if an organization is worried about that's in place.
Yeah, they all have pretty tight, because we're doing that at the moment. We're doing a huge GDPR kind of review, and I've had to go back to anyone that we're working with and ask them for their privacy policy and where is that data stored and in what way is it stored and so on. So I haven't come across any issues with any of the AT I use in terms of anything you'd be concerned about. Yeah, I think they're all quite aware of putting all of those measures in place, but obviously the responsibility would be on us to check that, you know. So sometimes if it was say if you're recommending kind of free apps and stuff to students, I would highlight to them, look, obviously you'll be providing information, you know, identifying information and stuff like that, and, you know, make sure that you're comfortable with whatever the privacy policy is. And but that would be more so for just recommendations around free tools and stuff.
Okay, Sue, thanks for those. Sorry, we're just getting a lot of questions in it with those kind of tools. So feel free. Sorry, I won't interrupt you for a little while.
No, you're fine.
That's okay.
But we can definitely should have space. Well, we should have a little bit of time, I think, at the end. So, but no, I'm happy to answer any questions. This is a really quick one. So this is a tool for visual impairment, but actually it's for any print impairment whatsoever. I'm not demoing it because I actually don't have access to it. You have to have a print impairment to get access to it. So it's the Dolphin Easy Reader app. Now, when I say I don't have access to it, anybody can download the app itself. But to get access to the books for free, you need to register with NCBI and you need to have a print impairment. So basically what this is it's a whole bunch of kind of bookshare libraries across the EU that are joined together. So it provides access to thousands of academic titles. So fiction titles as well, but academic titles too. And you can access them, you can enlarge the font, convert to MP3, electronic braille, an EPUB version, and so on. So the way that you get access to this is the NCB library. It's Lena Kuzi in the NCB library is the kind of contact there. And if you ask her for the form, you can complete the form on behalf of the student, or you can ask the student to do it. But what Lena did offer was that if the student has a reading list of books that they need, she will kind of obtain them on their behalf. And if there are any that aren't currently available in an accessible format, she will contact the publishers and try and push to get a copy of them. So that's a useful one to have, like for book versions, if there isn't ebooks in the library or whatever. Now I have a few other tools and everyone will have access obviously to this presentation, but I'm going to jump down to a couple of resources in particular that I wanted to look at, because these are kind of useful for staff and for students. So I thought they were kind of good ones to have. So the first one here is Learning Labs. And Learning Labs is basically like an assistive technology training website or whatever. So a single license for this, again, I think it's around the £100 mark UK. But you can assign the license to a student for like 2 weeks and then you can take it back. So just after you've initially given them their AT referral, you can give them access to this and then give it to another student later on. So the idea with this is you go into all lab suites and it basically has training on all of the key assistive technologies. So it's actually really useful for if you're the AT kind of person in your institution or you're just interested in it, it's useful in that sense. So you can see here it has Caption.ed, it has Glean, the ones we've mentioned, and it has any of the kind of other key Dragon assistive technology tools. And the nice thing about it is Learning Labs has been around for ages and they have a really UDL approach. So they have a written kind of text version of the instructions, a video version, and then a simulation kind of version where you can actually walk through what it is you need to do, which obviously is really good for any kinesthetic learners and that kind of thing. And then if you're giving this license out to a student, what you can do is you use the star here to make it a recommended. So they've got each part of the application broken down into the tiniest little bite-sized chunks, which again is really good from a universal design perspective. You can choose the ones that you want a student to learn. And then when you give them the login details, they can just jump straight into recommended labs and they'll see the ones that you have assigned for them to cover. So that's really good in terms of, well, a couple of reasons. Generally, I would still see the students face-to-face and give them face-to-face training, or at least offer it, but this can be a backup to that. Or if you didn't have the capacity to train students in, this would be an alternative to that as well. And also just for yourself as a place to kind of jump to that's useful. So that's one resource I wanted to look at. And the other one then to finish up on really is census access. So within the last year or two in UCD, we have integrated two tools that are good for kind of text to speech. So one is within the VLE, it's called Blackboard Ally. And basically beside any piece of content that the student is given within a module, you'll have a little conversion tool. And again, like the Dolphin Easy Reader, but this is for PDFs, Word, PowerPoint, and so on. It'll allow you to convert to MP3, convert to a tagged PDF, the electronic braille, EPUB, and then there's another version called Beeline, I think it's called, and it's the text is kind of in rainbow kind of colors, and it's very good in terms of concentration and focus and keeping you focused as you read. So that's Blackboard Ally, but this one is Census Access. Again, we have this integrated into our website, to the Access and Lifelong Learning website, but anyone can actually use this tool. Now, if you're using it like en masse, you should have a site license, which is what we've opted for, but it is available for free. I think they say it's like on a fair play basis. So if individuals are sometimes using it to convert individual PDFs, then that's acceptable use basically. So it's censusaccess.com. They're really, I think they're based in, it's somewhere in Scandinavia anyway. Trevor, you might know.
And I don't know offhand, but just to reassure people that all these things that you're mentioning, they are in that Sway presentation.
Yes.
That you have this link. So yeah, so just in case people are wondering, they're all the links of the things Sue was mentioning are there. So we have put it in the chat and we'll add it again.
Yeah, they're there, and there's more there as well, but I just wanted to pull these ones out. But yeah, anything I'm covering here is linked there. So the way it works is basically you go to Census Access, you click on Convert to File, and you can use a URL or you can use a file. So when you've chosen a file, and it can be any of these formats, it'll then give you the output formats that you want to choose from. And as you can see there, like I say, it's audio, braille, ebook. I think the file that I have uploaded there is a tagged PDF, so it's not showing me that option. The options will change depending on what your original file is. But if you uploaded an inaccessible PDF, like a photocopy or a scan or whatever, you'll see tagged PDF there as well. And this is far superior in terms of its quality than say like the Adobe Scan app and other apps that use optical character recognition to convert from an image type file to an accessible file that can be read aloud. This will be it's a much better quality than that. So the result then will be emailed back to you, and sometimes it can be very quick. It depends on the type of file. I think it can take up to 24 hours, but it's a very good quality. Now, a student obviously could go ahead and you could recommend this to them if they have, because that'd be one of the main kind of complaints that we would have had in the past, is that students would say, well, I'm getting all these PDFs through the VLE, but I can't use any of the read aloud tools on them. So this will allow them to change it to a tagged PDF, or you couldn't use a screen reader tool on them. And this is one of the things, but what we're trying to do as much as possible, and this is where the site license comes in, is promote this to faculty. And obviously if faculty, when they're uploading the material, use Census Access first, it means one person having to do it, and it'll be accessible then for all iterations of the course into the future, as opposed to individual students all having to make the content accessible themselves. And it ties in with web content accessibility guidelines, the directive there, making sure that all of your module material is accessible. So it's a really good tool to kind of promote throughout your institution. So they were the main ones I wanted to look at. As you can see, they're under kind of resources, but there's some other kind of inbuilt tools. I've kept it very small, but pretty much trying to show, for different tools, there's always an alternative. So if something doesn't suit a student for any particular reason, there'll probably be another option there. And it's great to go where possible to the free option first, not for our own sakes, but because it's then a tool the student can bring forward into the work setting, or any other general setting, without having the concern of a new subscription each year and that kind of thing. But obviously then we have the proprietary tools there as well for that extra functionality if it's needed. So that's it really. If there's any more questions.
Definitely. So, Sue, even that whole topic of getting students to buy into converting, say, Word docs or text into MP3s, like for me, I always found that was like a really easy win with students, because if you told a student, especially maybe with dyslexia or something like that, that they could listen to information rather than read it, that was good. And then what I discovered as well accidentally is a lot of mature students, for some reason, really gravitated towards the MP3 tool, because they get into the habit, because they commute or they're driving the kids to work or doing like all these other things during the day, especially part-time students, that pile up a few MP3s on their smartphone, and then in the car or as they commute on public transport, then they'd listen to that information, especially when lectures are really good to supply reading before class. That's always a great way of utilizing that feature. So like I think it's just productive as well, maximizing that time.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's that'll be the main, like we get our usage statistics each week from Census Access, and the MP3 would always be the main one that people opt for, and then tagged PDF would be the next one. And obviously if you tag it as a PDF, you can then have it use a text to speech tool with it, because other students they might want both, so when someone's commuting and stuff, it's great to just have the MP3, but we will have students who they'll read and they'll want to listen along at the same time. So that's where the text to speech is good, and it's literally highlighting the words as you go along, and it's going in through the eyes and the ears, and people have to find that really helpful. So they'd be the two kind of top ones that people are using. So it's definitely popular. It's at the moment for us, it's just a matter of making sure there's awareness around it. But
so how do you get awareness around it? That's the bit that I'm always curious about, because like these tools are fantastic, especially the free ones. I think it was Matthew in the chat as well just pointed out about Word MP3 is great and it's fantastic, and Ally have allowed like this freely available section of their website where you can upload your Word document and convert to an MP3, and it's really good quality as well. So like those kind of options a few years ago were a little bit patchy and not so good quality, but now it's like it's just there and anyone around the world can use it. So like, is it something, do you think students have to be shown, or do they naturally gravitate towards these kind of options if they're available to them? Or
I think they still need to be shown. I think maybe people who have because Apple were that bit further ahead and it's kind of very seamless on iPhone and stuff, those students tend to be quite savvy, just in the this is very anecdotal, but that's what I've noticed. Whereas stuff within Word, because it's been very recent, like that Word dictation tool has improved even in the last year or two. But I think with Word, it's one of those things people will just continue to use it the way they've used it, like we all do. You get used to a certain thing, you only use a certain functionality. So I think it still needs to be promoted. And extra training. So like I'm hoping the beginning of the next academic year to kind of have like an 80 in your lunchtime, little 15-minute session each week on a different assistive technology tool, and hope that at the moment it's still very individual one-on-one kind of sessions, but I'm hoping to do a little bit more around that. We've run talks recently or workshops around dyslexia and ADHD specifically, and had an assistive technology section within those. But certainly I think that the free tools are getting better and better, and that's why I've wanted to move towards this kind of range as opposed to read and write goals, proprietary tool. It's all integrated so well now, and they're going to use it so much more when it's already part of their workflow.
Especially even now with like Chrome browser plugins, like even the Edge browser itself, that's like that powerful immersive reader tool as well, and that read aloud tool, and the voice quality. God, I remember it wasn't that many years ago where the voice qualities were a little bit bad. So you'd have to try and coax the students into listening to the robotic language, while now a lot of them are like really advanced. We do still use a kind of a premium one, natural reader, for that reason, just that there's such a choice of voices and there's premium range voices. I still think there's a little bit of a
work to be done around the naturalness of it. So we do still provide that as an option if students prefer that. And that's a really nice tool as well. I didn't include it there today, but the Natural Reader is a good one, and again has an extension and a desktop kind of version and everything. But the
actually,
voices are still,
but that's the problem. You could do a whole 40 minutes on all the options that are available, just even about read aloud and all the free options out there now. Well, like it wasn't that many years ago where there was one or two out there. Well, now, again, the options are amazing.
Yeah. There's a new Irish one actually called peer.ie if anyone wants, and that's currently free. They're kind of running a pilot at the moment. And it's got a text to speech, speech to text, grammar checker. It's kind of pitched as a personal workspace for anybody with dyslexia or other specific learning difficulties that would benefit from that. Yeah, so there's a huge range of them out there. And another thing to note is within Learning Labs, the first section there is all about the inbuilt accessibility tools. And that's really a good port to call, so if anyone was to sign up for that, you can cover all of the inbuilt stuff as well. And Enable Ireland do a good bit on that too.
Okay. That's great. Actually, someone has just written some prefer the older screen reader robotic voice because they can listen accurately and at an accelerated speed. But I actually didn't know that. Thanks very much for saying that. So again, like coming down to, dare I say, UDL and options is always a good thing. People are out there and they all have their own needs that are diverse. And, now is a time where, technology is almost becoming as diverse as the students themselves. So, it's really easier to tailor those learning experiences now for students.
And there's the whole mainstreaming side of it as well. Like Grammarly, a huge number of our students use Grammarly, but I mean, that's practically a mainstream tool as well, so it's, the boundaries are blurred, which is great.
And even for those read aloud tools, like even Immersive Reader, like one way I found to get students linking with it is, with proofreading. As we all know, students love proofreading. Well, maybe it's like discussion there. But one of the great things about like proofreading is, for those students who, and I would include myself in this, like I can't see the wood from the trees. When I write something, I find it very difficult to see the mistakes. But one of the things that I do find a lot easier is using Immersive Reader to speak out the assignment to me. So I'm better at proof listening rather than proof hearing. So if I hear something, at least that doesn't sound right, I can go back, edit it, and then restart that read aloud process in Immersive Reader. And again, someone has said that Hemingway, that's a really good website as well. That's really good for spotting mistakes and that, and giving spelling and grammar tips as well. So, and that Microsoft Editor as well is really good. So, it's great, again, like having these discussions because, I had forgotten about Hemingway. It's a few years since I looked at that. Yeah, and it's great.
Yeah, and sorry, just what you were saying there, Trevor, about the getting them to, just even try it for the proofreading. The same with the speech to text, like just do it for your notes to start with, or just do it for a first draft to get your ideas out there. And can help to ease in with one of the free tools. So, we tend not to jump straight to Dragon unless someone knows they want to use speech to text for exams. We say, look, you've got Word, you've got Google voice typing, whatever, try that first and see if it's sufficient. And if not, then we can look at Dragon then.
Absolutely. And one of the things I wish that I had access to Microsoft Word when I was a student, because one of the things I loved doing as a student was handwriting all my essays. So loads of scratches and scribbles and all things like that. And then it was the typing of my scribbled notes. That took ages. Well, now I wish I could use that dictation tool in Word just to read out the notes that make sense to me and nobody else.
Yeah,
and it would just cut hours out of that process.
Yeah.
So like that's I think there's like so many options now regarding how to approach assignments.
It's not that long ago I found a fully handwritten essay that I had done in college. We're showing our age now, Trevor.
Yeah.
But it's so strange to think now that you sat down and hand wrote the whole thing,
It's strange. And plus, with your final essay submission, you were using like Tipex if you had done a little bad word and things like this. Oh my God. But, for people like us who are 28, it must be so strange for people who are younger.
Yeah. On that note.
Hopefully PCR don't have a lie detection service with their captioning, because that
It probably will soon. The way the technology is changing.
Well, Sue, thank you so much. And I think we got through loads of the questions there. So thank you very much. And I see William Nolan is still here from UL. William, oh my God, that's amazing. So it's interesting. Yeah. So again, the transferability of the tools as well from education to the workplace is something that is coming up as well, because, you know, now is the time, especially with so many options in education, that we're seeing, you know, so much potential about then transferring those tools to the workplace as well. And you know, with that same ethos of inclusion as in education to the workplace as well. So, I mean, I think it's amazing that the power of 18 now. Yeah. So I think we're having a quick, if Jess can come on just for a second and give us the lowdown, that would be great.
So we're just going to take a quick break, a 5-minute break, and we'll see you back here. If you want to stay on even, we'll keep the link open.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Jess.
Okay, thanks everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Well, Sue, thanks so much. Yeah, have a good one. And with the 5 minutes, that's, yeah, like, how fast does a kettle boil? We'll see. Thanks so much. Well, Sue, and again, just reminding people that all the links to what Sue mentioned about are in that the Sway thing. And actually, one question came up as well about what's the difference between Sway and PowerPoint.
Yeah, so Sway is basically, it's another Microsoft tool, but it's online. Basically creates a web page, and there's much less options in terms of formatting your whole theme. You can't really choose your background too much, but it's good, I think, when there's a lot of links and you're embedding video and different. I just prefer it, but yeah, it just scrolls through. You can do it virtually, I was going to say horizontally or the other way. Vertically, I got there in the end.
I prefer calling it the other way.
It's I like it. I just don't like PowerPoint a whole lot, but it's good because you can embed it then very easily, and you can there's like a shareable visual link and stuff. So, but it's probably not as versatile as PowerPoint now, in fairness.
That's a nice one, and then again, it can be accessible as well. You know.
Oh yeah, there's an accessibility checker built into it. Yeah, so I mean, it's a Microsoft tool, so it's still.
I think Immersive Reader is even active in it as well.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, cool.
So, yeah, if memory serves, yeah.
Yeah.
And then Tony's just saying Sway separates the content and the design nicely, which makes it easier to make the format flexible on different devices. That is a really good point. Yeah, because I think we're definitely seeing so many students seem to be like working on their mobile phone devices as well now, that I'm still in denial about. I couldn't, like, but they seem to be able to do it. I just can't. Yeah,
I know.
Yeah,
but I suppose maybe it comes from a kind of a necessity initially, and then they're just so used to it. You know, like you get used to it. I suppose I still need the big. I'm not even that keen on doing big work on a tablet, like, let alone.
Yeah. See, I don't know. Are we old school then again?
I think we're just
yeah. Like
it goes back to being 28.
Yes, we're the oldest 28-year-olds here. Well, so if you want to head out for a break, by all means.
It's just sort of one other question there, and probably gone. But if they were using the browser version, I think of Caption Ed, and they were to verbally ask the lecturer to elaborate on something, would the voice not be recorded? No, it wouldn't be.
Okay.
Would I have to use the desktop version? No, you would have to use the desktop version. But it's more for, I suppose, recordings, webinars, Zoom classes. But yes, you wouldn't know. It definitely doesn't record your own voice in that situation. But you'd hear the answer. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thanks. That was kind of a masterclass in 18.
Well, it was a very quick dip into a few.
Yeah.
There's so much. I mean, you could do a 3-day event. Why don't you do a 3-day event, Trevor?
I think 15-day event. But even the 3.5 days, like, even with AT demos alone, I really think, the whole thing could be about AT demos alone and just see, because I think, especially with the higher in education audience here, because, the great thing about AT is that it's non-standardized, but the flip side is then everybody figures out what that means to them in their own individual context with the services that they have, with the types of staff they have available. And then like that, it looks so different across the board. And we're definitely seeing, like, I suppose, time being needed for AT officers to train and become aware of all these evolving technologies.
That whole, like I say, that section that kind of gets lost, the evaluation and the getting the feedback, if I suppose if there was joined up on it, that different institutions maybe did that work for different pieces of technology or something, and we can all benefit then from that feedback, because if you're trying to cover it all, it's just not possible, to cover it all in each institution, to do their own kind of research around how, uptake and how long a student continues to use it and so on. So we'll have to tackle that now. 2022, 23.
22, yeah. No, but it is great. I think as well, because there's an appetite to share as well in education, because basically we're all trying to figure things out all the time. So even like accessibility, people are trying to figure out what that is, how to approach it, what UDL is as well. We're seeing, like, the appetite for sharing is strong there as well, because again, it seems to mean something slightly different depending on everyone's context, which is great. But sharing that to help other people then connect to whether it's UDL or accessibility or assistive technology seems to be the big thing, right now.
Maybe we need an AT badge like the UDL badge.
We sure do. Well, I mean, if there's an AT officer in an institution eager to develop such a thing,
we'll have to link in about that next week. And I'm not on leave anymore.
Well, I am on leave next week, so by all means, try and contact me next week.
About that huge undertaking.
Yeah, absolutely. Easy undertaking.
Okay.
Easy. Okay.
Okay, I'll leave you to it. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
See you soon. Good luck. Okay. So again, we're resuming any minute now, and next up we've got like a really, I've been really looking forward to hearing more about the next presentation. That's Jeremy Wren, and that's also Jean Rial. So it's Kerry and hey, so it's Kerry and Limerick represented today.
That's it. We're still talking.
Well, that's great. I have been dying to hear about this work for ages. So I'm so delighted. So I'm going to say nothing. I'm going to say absolutely nothing. But like, if you want to just start sharing your screen, or whoever's in charge of the PowerPoint, just to make sure all that's working.
Brilliant. Jeremy's going to leave that in his capable hands.
Excellent. Jean, will you just that Celia and Paula haven't joined us yet, will you just send them on the link to join there just while I'm kicking off? I just thought of it there, I just don't see them on the call.
Okay, dokie.
So I'm going to share my screen now, just make sure everything is working. Share my sound.
So, and maybe then throughout the presentation, if questions come in, if there's a batch of questions coming in, we might just deal with that as they come in. And then if people still want to use the Q&A, that's great for specific questions. For the speakers, that's fantastic. I know people are using the chat box as well for questions. So I tried to juggle between both and try to be as fair as possible. So bear with me, people.
Excellent. You can see my screen there, Trevor.
I can't, if you can just put it into presentation mode. Good stuff.
Excellent. I've turned off my subtitles there, so they shouldn't be coming through. I think that's okay.
Okay. Yeah. No, they're not coming through, which is good. And then what I'm going to do is, while I'm not speaking, I'll turn off my camera and my mic, and then leave you at it. Okay.
No problem at all.
Thanks very much.
Okay, I'll start away. So thanks everyone for being here to hear our presentation today. My name is Jeremy Wren. I'm Technology Enhanced Learning Officer at Kerry ETB. And Jean is from Mary Immaculate College, and I'll also be joined by Paula Tiller and Celia O'Shea, two FET practitioners from Kerry TB. So I'll let the lads introduce themselves and make a mine. So our background, I suppose, in 2015, we really had a greenfield site. We had 2 of 8 schools who had email systems. Head office staff were using email. That was pretty much it. All our files were stored on servers. We used and on devices, and we were using USB sticks to transfer files. So our project, I suppose, was to develop a whole school approach and a commitment to highly effective use of digital technologies in teaching, learning, and assessment. This largely involved moving to the cloud. We developed a cloud portal with 8 schools and 1 FET campus, Kerry College in Listowel. We focused on developing teacher skills in year 1. We didn't introduce the portal to students until year 2, till teachers had developed some confidence. We also then added all our FET practitioners and all our learners later, and our 3 community national schools. We phased out local storage and USB sticks. And digital skills featured on all agendas. So all principals meeting agendas, all meetings in schools, leaders model good practice, started using devices. All our principals meetings were paperless, for example, and that was very important. We had new tools, I suppose, and this gave us huge opportunities to do our work in new ways. Because we were using the cloud, students could access their files from school or at home. They could start something in class and finish it at home. They could use any device. They could use a computer, a tablet, their phone. We had new tools. They could co-author, so they could be working on the same document at the same time. It allowed us to use things like OneNote, Office Lens, Immersive Reader. We started small. We started with email for staff, school calendars, OneDrive, developing our digital resources, introducing OneNote for teaching and learning. We later then, I suppose, developed whole school OneNote systems, started using forms. Later, Teams became very important, and next year all assignments for our FET students will be submitted through Teams assignments. And I suppose we'd free office for everybody. So now these tools were in the hands of all of our students and all of our teachers and practitioners and learners. To make this successful, I suppose we needed to have a lot of supports in place. Teaching and learning supports for teachers, room where people could have discussions, developing, I suppose, local leadership in school, and having localized support, because all schools and FET centres are different. We needed to develop our networks, get increased amount of devices, and things that we did in FET, like we do, or in Kerry ETB, we developed, I suppose, 2 ETB digital strategies. In FET, we had digital champions to support staff. So we had a team, I suppose, of expert teachers with very high level digital practice that supported people. We training events for staff, we got guidelines for practitioners and learners, we devices for staff, and what was very important was our device loan scheme for learners, which helped us to get an awful lot of devices into learners' hands. Key here as well, I suppose, was that this was changing the conversation to make technology for everyone. Digital tools for all, not just for some who are having difficulty. In 2018, this became one of our 5 high-level goals for schools: to support diversity and inclusion and use assistive technology to support students' education. It also featured in our Kerry ETB ICT strategy. So why UDL? So it aligned very much with our core values. Jean will talk about that a bit more later. It dovetailed, I suppose, it very much was consistent with our FET culture. Our FET culture was hugely supportive. Practitioners valued that learners coming into their classrooms had huge life experience and vast amount of skills and an awful lot to contribute. Everybody was treated as equals, and practitioners really realized that people might have been coming from an educational experience that wasn't ideal, and people's confidence needed to be built up and people needed to be supported. And I thought I was very consistent with UDL. Student voice had become an increased focus in schools, and I felt this was a key cultural factor, success factor for UDL, I suppose, to be heard. We had started, a lot of collaboration. We had in schools an instructional leadership process where teachers had been developing their skills to work more as facilitators and less as sage on stage, with communities of practice across VET and schools. And one of our goals, I suppose, was to foster a culture of collaboration between teachers where good practice can be shared using digital tools. I had done the AHEAD badge myself, I suppose, about 2 years ago now. So that gave me a great introduction to UDL and gave me a lot of ideas about what we could do. And lastly, I suppose, the pandemic gave us a new way of looking at things. I think there was a general acceptance about the power of digital technologies to enhance teaching, learning, assessment, and teachers had proved over the lockdown periods and in between that they could make great use of these tools and see really good outcomes in their classes for their learners. I'll hand over to Jean there now.
Thanks a million, Jeremy. Thank you. So yeah, as Jeremy was saying there, we have a new vista here. So through COVID, even though I wouldn't recommend a pandemic for upskilling and advancing in the way we look at education, really, we had to take a step back and actually see where we are. So if you could just move on the slide for me there, Jeremy, that'd be great. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to look at, where Kerry ETB were actually at. And as you can see from what Jeremy has told us so far, they've had fantastic foundation in ICT and the development of ICT skills for staff and for students. And my background is in universal design for learning and creating inclusive learning environments. And through COVID, I'd been working around the country with a lot of education boards and with education centres and with schools individually. But I came across Kerry ETB during the lockdown series, and I was really impressed by the foundations that they had. And through discussions with Jeremy, it became clearer and clearer to me that they were actually at a stage where we could really do something effective with UDL. So what I did was I looked at their documentation, and I looked at their core values, and I looked at the language that was being used in that, and it just screamed UDL to me. So the original diagram there had respect, quality, inclusion, equality, and learning. And basically, it just brings it all together under the UDL lens. And the one thing that I always say to people when we talk about UDL is that UDL isn't something new. What UDL is a piece of the inclusive puzzle that brings good inclusive practice together. And that's really what we wanted to promote here. So if you can just move on there, Jeremy, to the next one for me. So again, as I said, when we looked at the strategic documents, I pulled out the high-level goals that Kerry ETB have and mapped the UDL framework to that. So we had huge buy-in from management, from the principals in the schools, from the managers in the VET centres. So this made it, a very easy transition for me into this project. So I'll just get you to click over to the next one for me. Great stuff. So one of the things really that we really wanted to look at here is that there's pockets of UDL practice around the country. And there's some amazing work being done. But really what I wanted to do was I wanted to look at having a UDL roadmap, because we know ourselves in higher ed, that when students come to us and we start giving them, massive amounts of choices, that the choice in itself sometimes can become a barrier because they don't know how to engage in that choice. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to look at how can we develop a UDL roadmap from primary to post-primary to VET that not just looks at technology, but that is rooted in really good pedagogy. So the pedagogy underlays all of our technological innovations that we use in this project. So again, if I can just get you to move on there for me, Jeremy. So basically what we did was we put together a 2-year UDL Champions project building on the UDL the Champion Technologists projects that are already running. So it's the lexicon that people are used to using. So basically what we did was we put a call out to the entire ETB And we asked teachers to volunteer, and we had 28 teachers that volunteered for this project. So we have 2 in primary schools that represent 2 primary schools themselves. We have 15 participants in post-primary representing 8 schools, and we have 11 practitioners which represent 5 centres, which, as you can see, is a fantastic spread across the whole of the ETB. So basically what we did was we decided that year 1 was going to be a training year. So we meet every Tuesday from 3 to 5, which takes a huge commitment from all of the participants. So the first hour is in training, so it's on UDL and it's on technology, and the second hour then is the creating of a community of practice. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to really unpick the UDL framework and look at how it would translate into practice in Kerry ETB, and to give people a space where they could actually discuss it. And initially, when we were breaking down the project, I thought for the first couple of weeks I would mix the groups in the breakout rooms so that we would have primary, secondary and FET together, and then that we would move out into the sectors. But in actual fact, people have asked that they could stay in those mixed groups because the sharing and collaboration is so important to them. One thing I just wanted to highlight as well is these teachers volunteered for this program. And when you look at the breakdown of years of experience, we can see that we have a really good spread right across, but we primarily have a large group within the 10 to 25 year group. So this, breaks down those attitudes to, oh, technology is only adapted by, newer teachers or, different generation to myself. But it actually isn't true. We have teachers right across the board who are genuinely interested in using technology. And COVID has had a huge impact on that, because before, when we talked about accessibility was for those who couldn't access the traditional route. Whereas during COVID, accessibility was for everyone. If you could access in any way at all, it worked. And we broke down those barriers. So it opened up the field of play to us. If you can move over there for me, Jeremy, that'd be great. So what we wanted to do then when we looked at UDL was we wanted to really look at the core of what is UDL about. Okay, we have our 3 principles. We all know the 3 principles: multiple means of engagement, multiple means of representation, and multiple means of action and expression. But why do we want to engage those 3 principles? We want to support the creation of an expert learner. Now, an expert learner, as we all know, is not an A student. An expert learner is somebody who understands how they learn, who can manipulate their environment to self-support in their learning. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to create an environment where we could support students to become expert learners, because you can't make somebody purposeful and motivated, resourceful and knowledgeable, strategic and goal directed. Because if we had that recipe, we'd sell it to make a small fortune. But we can't. What we can do is we want to set up that environment where our students feel comfortable to explore and to access knowledge and learning in a way that's actually meaningful to them. So obviously then technology becomes, a huge element in that. So if you can just move on there for me, Jeremy. Thank you. So what I wanted to do here is, and we all know, like prior to COVID, that technology or assistive technology was always given to the students who had difficulty accessing. What we wanted to do was we wanted to break down those barriers, because we'd broken down the barriers in COVID. And what we wanted to look at is that all technology is assistive technology. And I love this quote, even though it's from 1991, it still, rings true today. For people without disabilities, technology makes things easier. For people with disabilities, technology makes things possible. And that is so true. And what we wanted to do now is that, because, the assistive elements are built into everyday technology, we wanted to harness the power of everyday technology to ensure that our students felt comfortable around using the technology to the best of their advantage. So say, for instance, if you take the immersive reader, and you spoke about this earlier, Trevor, about using it for proofreading. If you introduce the immersive reader to the entire group and you show what it can do, and then you allow them to play with it and allow them to find how it best supports them, then it doesn't matter whether you're using the immersive reader because you can't access the text yourself, or whether you're using the immersive reader to analyze how you've written something. It doesn't matter. The point is that we're all using it, but we're using it to self-support. And because we're all using it, there's no stigma around using the technology in the classroom. People are open to it. People realize that people learn in a different way. And the one thing that we wanted to say here around this is that flexibility in the use of technology is accessibility. It's where we have blockages in how we use technology that our students find it difficult. So we wanted to make sure that when we're using technology here, that we're opening it up to everybody. Everybody has the same opportunities to use it, but just use it in a way that they feel supports themselves. So I'll get you to move on there, Jeremy, please. Okay, so then when we look at diversity, you know, again, when we look at diversity through the COVID lens, you know, we actually realized that the diversity issue really is nothing new. We're all diverse. It's the environment that we're in. Does the environment that we're in suit our particular needs? And I love this quote from Rose and Myers, which is, by using the UDL framework, educators can accept learner variability as a strength to be leveraged, not a challenge to be overcome. And if we were all to think in that mindset, how open would our education system actually be? If we were to open up the opportunities that technology provides to our students and allow them to engage with it in a way that supported them, the opportunities would be endless for our students. And that's really where we want to go. So I've given you sort of the context of the project. What I want to do now is I'm going to hand you over, I think Paul is up next, to hear from a FET practitioner on the ground who is implementing this, and she'll give you some of her experience there. Thanks a million.
Thank you, Jean. Can you hear me? I'm in a hotel, so I apologize if there's any background noise. So really, I'm just going to start with my FET journey with UDL, which started with an Ahead summer school in 2020, when I was in the middle of developing an online course for the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Learners. And immediately, UDL made total sense to me. I come from a literacy background, and it really just, the idea of removing barriers just made absolute sense to me, and maximizing accessibility to everyone, and just incorporate. So I incorporated it into my online course at that time, and started to consider what else I could do, how I could increase engagement, representation, and expression. So Jeremy, can you move to the next slide, please? So I start all my courses now by looking at where people are at, and then scaffolding from there. So to do that, I have introduced a digital skills survey, which is based on the Ankosan survey, and I've added a few questions of my own, and I just see where people are at, and most people have some level of digital involvement. So they're using WhatsApp, or they might use the camera on their phone. So that's a really great starting point, and then I can build from there and gradually add skills. We're using Teams as a platform, whether I'm in a face-to-face situation or online. I would use Teams as my delivery platform. So Jeremy, could you move to the next session, please? Sorry, next slide. So these are some of the elements that I would use, and I looked at a lot of different ways of increasing engagement and representation, and I really wanted to also look at some of the challenges that adult learners have, particularly, which is time, and they can't always make a class. Life gets in the way. So the self-directed element and the self-paced element really appealed to me. I looked at different tools, and eventually I landed on Nearpod, which was perfect for creating a flipped class. It has tools for collaboration in it. It enables the student voice through open-ended questions, and through collaboration boards. It has self-assessment through quizzes and expression through drawing tools. So it really incorporated everything, and it has immersive reader in, and it has the ability to record student voices through audio to answer questions. So gently introducing and building the flipped lessons in Nearpod really enabled students to overcome some of their digital fears, and they found it a great tool. And often they were saying, you know, how great it was to be able to look at the class beforehand, and to review it and go back on it as well. And I got reports as to their engagement and so on, and we could take deeper dives then in the live sessions. Immersive Reader I use habitually now with all learners. I show all learners how to use that, and I feel that I'm hearing more student voices now. Translator is a tool that my learners use, and I show everyone how to use Office Lens so that they can scan pages of textbooks and open them in Immersive Reader. And formative assessment, I use exit tickets in Microsoft Forms, and with summative assessment, I've really increased choice in my assessments. So I don't give just one methodology unless it's required for learners to be able to submit their summative assessment. They have a choice of how they can do that. So Jeremy, that takes me to the next slide nicely. Oh, yeah. So this was a learner who came to the course with very low digital confidence. We were in lockdown. She was really reluctant to even think about continuing the course if it was going to all be online. However, we just built on the skills she had. She used WhatsApp. We started using the tools in Teams and getting discussion going in Teams. And this was her summative assessment for Care of the Older Person module, which was actually an online book in Book Creator that she created herself. So, and entirely by her own means. So this is content from the Book Creator project. So the last slide was the cover. This is actually one of the pages in the book. And as you can see, she's even embedded video. So she was really, really pleased with what she'd achieved. And actually a number of the women from that course said that it had really transformed their own lives, because they had much more digital confidence, and they were able to do things that they hadn't been able to do before, like do their motor tax online. So it was very positive all round. Even though it was a healthcare course, their digital skills were a really good side effect. Okay, so and I guess this sums up my practice as a UDL practitioner. I would consider myself to be moving towards being a UDL practitioner. So I believe it's flexibility. So I think Jeremy or Jean mentioned flexibility. And that's so important. We have to be flexible. We're dealing with adults. They have life situations, they have different experience, and we have to be flexible. And these are some of the words that come to my mind when I think about working with UDL with my learners. Okay, next slide, Jeremy, please. And so to summarize or to finish, I would say that UDL rocks my boat in a very positive way, and hopefully it's rocking my learners' boats in positive ways as well. So thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks a million, Paula. We'll hand over now to Celia.
Hi guys, thanks Paula, I love your last image, pretty cool. It's rocking my boat too. So I came up with a definition of what UDL means to me after, I suppose I did the UDL badge 3 years ago with Jeremy and another colleague, and this is what I've come to my own conclusions, that UDL is a musical composition, and that composition is our UDL framework that we all reference to, and the teachers fine-tune. We fine-tune it because we all have teaching preferences, just like our students have different learning preferences. And so that music and melody converts to jazz, rock, pop, and R&B in our classrooms. And that's the magic that happens in our classroom. And in relation to the music that I use UDL, but also I use other teaching strategies like assessment for learning and effective group work in the classroom. Students are then empowered to express themselves to that music based on their uniquenesses and individual goals. And students have all their ultimate goals laid out in their own little heads and their own different success. But UDL allows us to, I suppose, encourage and bring out the best in our students, because all students have capabilities and uniquenesses in that. So we'll just move on to the next slide, Jeremy, thank you. So looking at the framework and why I embraced UDL, and to be honest, it was like, it's like a new raising agent in my baking in the classroom, that it just everything rises and it's bigger and better and it tastes far better than anyone could imagine. So in relation to the why and that engagement, and students have a different answer to why, but my why was I wanted to increase accessibility and I wanted to really motivate my students and bring out the best in them. So looking at the engagement, things that I have incorporated, smart watches, linking it to calendars and Office 365, very simple basic stuff, and it empowers students to take responsibility for their own learning, and it brings out the best in them. The Mintometer, I use that, brainstorming ideas, and students love to see their ideas are worthy enough to make it to the board, and that sharing of information within the group. I use OneDrive hugely. I give feedback via OneDrive, so they share the file with me, and then I put on my dictate, recorded and read, and it's sent back to them so they know what critiques and direction that I was given to them to make it maybe a step up and improve in their grades. Yahoo, they love that because I suppose, look, there's lovely motivating chants and images that do pop up, and they can work together, and they love competing against each other. And I like a good card game from time to time, and it has that embedded in it. Forms, the exit tickets, like Paul, I've used them and I find them brilliant, short, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, where they're at. Is there a red light here, a green light, or amber? Do we need to do more time in that area? So I love doing that. And students actually are pretty impressed that I have a keen interest in their learning too. So then the second part of the framework representation, I use a lot of Word, both versions online and on the desktop. And of late, I figured out that OneDrive, you can use the same Word document just by syncing it, and you can open it in both and use the functions on both sides. So the first one there, dictate. I use this in my classroom. Students can see how simple and easy it is for me to use it, and as well that, you know, well, if she's using it, geez, maybe I should consider and trying it. And it doesn't suit everyone, so they can pick and choose whatever fruits in the basket they want to try. For a snack. So immerse the reader, reading back, proofreading their assignments, and the editor, seeing that spelling and grammar, getting it 100%, critiquing all the time. And then the Word online, thesaurus, they love thesauruses, and it's show me again, how'd you do that? And I use it as part of my teaching in class. And I say, that's a really bad word. Let's try a better, more flamboyant word, and let's use the thesaurus to do it. The translate, and they love using the bibliography as well in Harvest referencing, and that lovely simple tools, and everything I use it's basic and I'm building all the time. Same with PowerPoint and that paraphrasing, they love that function too. So then the action and expression, the last part, how I use a lot of Teams. I am going to adventure and take on and embrace, and I'm saying it out loud, so I'm pinned to the collar, in using OneNote in September. So Teams recording their classes, recording maybe 20 minutes, and then I reduce it to a 2-minute short video on how to do the assignment, how to get it started, using the templates and so on. The chats, and I encourage students to, you know, answer each other's questions from time to time through the chats. The LINs, if they want to handwrite their notes and they're not very savvy on the IT, that they can write it out, take a picture, upload it, share it, and I can correct it and assess it from there. And the Coggle is the last one that I love using. Students love it too. And again, it's just one page. They can either do it in the classroom with a piece of paper and the markers that we all used to do, or they can use the technology one there, Coggle, and it's all free. So everything there is free, and I don't have to pay extra for it. So I've lots to learn. I'm not advanced yet. I hope to get there. But using UDL has made me a lot more, I suppose, reflective and reassured that I am trying to provide the best possible service to our students, and more importantly, that they get a really good experience in my classroom, in our college, and as well cross-fertilizing it to colleagues. They are so interested in this area, and it's almost like there's a movement happening in the last few months alone. So thanks for that. I'll pass you back.
Brilliant. Thanks a million, Paula and Celia. As you can see, that's UDL in action. You know, we can talk about using UDL, but you can see two practitioners who are using it really, really effectively. So the other thing just to point out is with the project that we're running in Care ETB is that year 2 of it is an implementation phase. So we've just finished up our year 1, and everybody has designed their project. So come September, we're going to be implementing it across primary, secondary and FET, and we will continue our community practice every Tuesday to support each other. And because I think that's really, really important for this to go on after the project has finished. The ultimate goal of the project is to track and report on this implementation process and to hopefully create a UDL recognized flag for schools and colleges. So what we'd like to have is a recognition process in place that I can say my school is a UDL school, whether, you know, at whichever level we're at. So we'll have the levels embedded in that as well. But I think it's very important to name it, to name what we're doing, because once we name it, we can take ownership of it. Like, as you can see, these two practitioners have done already, you know, and I think once we see the benefits to our students, there's no going back from UDL. We're all definitely converts. So on that note, I will leave you. Do you want to come in or anything, Jeremy, there, just to finish up?
No, I think it was just very interesting and I suppose powerful to hear Celia and Paula. And I suppose, you know, at the end of the day, that's what it's about is what happens in Celia and Paula's classrooms and all of the other classrooms. And like that, I suppose, just, you know, that flexibility and giving people options and having them more in control, I suppose, of their own learning. I think we're seeing, you know, powerful results in action at the moment, and it's very exciting times.
Brilliant. Thanks, Millie. If there's any questions, Trevor, if you want to come in.
Yeah, no, really excited. I suppose just some logistical questions. So the age groups that you're dealing with in terms of the students. So what's the age range of the students?
So some of them are 4 and some of them are up to like any age at all.
65 is my eldest.
Wow.
Well, the lady that did the book creator was 50, in her mid-50s. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's incredible. So you must be getting lots of diverse feedback then from all the age ranges and that. So how are you just collecting all this information? I suppose I'm just behind the scenes.
Well, as I said, for next year, that's really our data collection piece. So this year, really what we wanted to do was we wanted to get the staff completely au fait with the whole UDL framework, but not just with the framework itself, but what the framework actually meant to them in their own sector, basically. So one of the things that really came out of it was the idea that, you know, people started looking at, okay, if I'm getting a student from 6th class into 1st year, what skill sets do they actually need to come into me? How do I develop those skill sets for them to go on to FET or to higher education? So we really started to look at, you know, how do we build that expert learner from the age of 4 upwards, and what's appropriate. And that's the kind of thing, and like even down to when we were looking at the feedback that we're going to measure it on, you know, we had to tailor the feedback to the age groups that we were working with, you know, and that's all part of the process as well, is that idea of what does UDL look like at 4? What does it look at 84? You know?
Yeah, because then I suppose what you're doing is like you're almost making like this transformative UDL kind of landscape really that's going to change and age with the student depending on the context as well. So that's...
And we're hoping, Trevor, I suppose, that you can move seamlessly, that if we're clever enough in our design, you should be able to build up your skills and learn in a consistent way, no matter what age you are. It shouldn't be, you know, you shouldn't be, you know, there should be no real drama or no real, you know, transition shock.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the other thing as well, Trevor, around this is that there's a huge amount of work going on in all of our ETVs, but I can only talk for Kerry, unique projects that are going on. But what we are doing is we're not doing something new. We've actually looked to see what's going on and how can we embed UDL in that, rather than superimpose UDL on it and not acknowledge the other projects that are going on. So now actually what's happening is when I go and talk to people, is they say, oh yeah, you know, I'm doing this project. Well, isn't that part of UDL there? And they're starting to make all of these connections. And by doing that and being open to the discussions, you know, we are getting this wealth of information, and it's starting to become part of the fiber of what people do. And I think, you know, when we look at it because there's so many benefits to everyone. And I think, as I said at the start, you know, that this is the piece of the inclusive puzzle that brings the practice together. You know, it's not that UDL on its own is this wonder, you know, it's the fact that we're looking at all of the amazing things we're already doing naming them and owning them. And that's really the important piece.
I think that's important, because even like one of the big things that I love about UDL is, you know, having choice. So students choosing how they want to interact or create or act on the information that they're giving to them. But like, I think like the earlier you start with choice, the more powerful choice is for that mature learner who's in education. Because I mean, like, you know, it's great to have choice and that, but as we see, just even from our UDL badge assignments in our rollout, that, you know, choice sometimes can be a very new concept for mature learners. You know, because, you know, we've all grown up in education where choice has been either limited or doesn't exist. So, you know, creating the essay has been like, you know, an activity that I have to say, I've forgotten 99% of all those essays that I would have ever written, because I would have never had the option to choose something else. And I think Katie Novak has this brilliant video. It's a short video about how in one of her biology classes, she was given the option to work with a classmate and to come up with a rap about blood. And she still remembers the rap and she talks about it. And it's like, it's amazing, because like I keep hear myself thinking like, oh, like there were aspects of, you know, biology myself or English and that I could have, you know, easily have gravitated towards, because I just know one of the ways I memorize information is like I have to sing it to myself. So whenever I learn a quote, I have to sing it to myself. It is awful for other people around me to have to listen to me memorize. But, you know, no one taught me that, so I had to come to that realization myself. But at least with G, you're consciously bringing in all these options to make people more aware of their learning styles.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The other thing, actually, I just saw a question pop up there very quickly. This whole UDL experience is from the moment somebody decides or even thinks that they might like to do a course, they have to have a UDL experience. So as part of the implementation plan, other resources that are within the teaching environment, be it you know, special needs assistances, resource teachers, PAs, whoever, they're all part of the plan. Do you know what I mean? It's not exclusive to any one group. And the one thing we always say is that, you know, UDL isn't something that you do to or for students, it's something you do with students. So wherever the student is at, whatever supports or resources they need, that's part of the plan. You know, we have to create that UDL experience from the moment somebody thinks I might like to do it. Because if we don't, we're superimposing barriers that don't need to be there. And as we all know, that's what UDL is about. It's about looking at the landscape and designing out the barriers where possible.
Absolutely.
You know.
Yeah. And Jeremy, do you want to chime in there?
Yeah,
we're about to close on the session. Yeah.
Just something interesting that I was talking to a teacher a few weeks ago, and just when you were talking there about singing to remember, one of our students, he answers questions better by rapping about it. So that's how he does his assignments. So, I mean, there's huge creativity going on in the pool of FET practitioners. And just to say about PAs, they're a crucial part in the process. We've done a lot of work with PAs in schools. SNAs would join whole staff sessions to work with teachers, and we would have specific sessions with SNAs as well. But what I've actually found is that SNAs are often far ahead maybe of where teachers might be. AT is kind of a very live part of their job. So I've seen a very high level of skills, I suppose, in our school SNA population in particular.
Yeah, I totally agree. Having been an SNA myself, you know, AT was always there in the background. Yeah, I know. Yeah. And I just want to say a big thanks also to everyone in the panel. Sorry, the two educators as well. Oh my God, hearing your stories has been incredibly powerful. So big thanks. And I just want to acknowledge that, because it really makes UDL come to life when we see about all those first-hand experiences as well. So I might hand people over to Jess. So I know Jess is in the background because she's going to wrap up her day. She has a little activity for us. Hi, Jess.
Hi there. Great to hear more about the connection between UDL and AT. I know that's always a drum that you do be banging, Trevor. So yeah, no, really, really good to be hearing that coming out. And on that note, in being kind of holistic in our approach to our work, I'm going to take you through a wee social media image that we'd love you to post today. So it'd be great if we could get you to post your AT promise, you know, based on what's your key takeaway learning today. So I've done one, I've kind of prepared one that you are welcome to share, absolutely, and we'll be sharing it from the AHEAD Twitter as well. So I've dropped the link in the chat where you can download either the editable file or the image that's ready to go, or you can also share from our AHEAD Twitter, #UDL, look at me. So I'm just going to share my screen and run through a few bits with you. Perfect. Can you see that, Trevor? Do you want to give me
Brilliant.
a thumbs up?
Yeah, I can see it. It's not in presentation mode, but that's perfect for this.
No, yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
I don't want
Great.
it in presentation mode, so we're going to just kind of pull this apart a little bit. So yeah, in doing this, I wanted to just kind of go through the design of the actual image, because I suppose it's one of those hidden things that we might not always think about that can really help with accessibility and digital accessibility for everybody. Because I suppose on social media, something that I notice in my work is it's not always necessarily thought about, or the first thing people think about is actual, you know, the digital accessibility. So one of the key things that I always look at that you can see on this image is having a strong color contrast, so that anyone who's colorblind or with any visual impairment, indeed, I find that it impacts whether I can see or read text on an image, is having a strong contrast. So, you know, you can see there's black and white here, but also even this pink color that I've used here also has a sufficient contrast. So how I normally kind of check that is I use this lovely website here, WebAIM. So I get the hex code on my color and I pop it in and just check, does this pass the WCAG? I usually try to go for the AAA, so you can see the contrast ratio here is quite high. If you're not sure what these terms that I'm using actually mean, that's absolutely fine. If you're ever in doubt, what's a good way to kind of get around it is to just drop a black box on top of any image where you're going to have text and just use black and white if you're in doubt, because then you can still use, you know, your company colors or your institution's colors or whatever colors you might want to use for your design, while making sure that it is accessible if you're not sure how to check in that kind of level of detail yourself. The other thing that is always important to kind of try to do is have a plain or a sans serif font. So what we mean here is, you can see I don't have serifs on this font. I'll show you what serifs would look like. So a classic one that we're probably all familiar with is Times New Roman. So you can see there's kind of little additions at the ends of each of the letters, makes it a little bit harder to read. Not so much with large text like this, but the smaller you go, if you do have serif font like this, the harder it is for people to read, and particularly with dyslexia or anyone who needs kind of a high contrast, it can just kind of make the letters kind of blend together or bleed into each other and more difficult to read. So that's why we'd always kind of recommend a plainer font like this, where you can see it doesn't have the little edges, shall we say. Oops. So yeah, so another thing that's important for accessibility on social media is camel case. So you can see we've used it in our event hashtag here. So what I mean by camel case is that each new word in the hashtag has a capital letter, so that anyone using a screen reader can differentiate each separate word. So for example, this is in camel case, and this is what it would look like if it was not in camel case. So you can see the words just bleed into each other. And that can also be confusing. You know, a screen reader will read that out incorrectly. It'll try to read it out as one word, but it can also be confusing if you don't know, if you're not familiar with certain words or certain terms. For example, when I joined AHEAD, UDL was something that was quite new to me. And so I would see UDL involved in hashtags as just these letters, and it would just kind of bleed into other words, and I wasn't quite sure what was being said. Equally, if English isn't your second language, you might not be familiar with certain words, or you might not be able to tell what the separation of the words are. What is this hashtag? What's the sentence? So just across the board, it's better practice just to divide up the words by having a capital letter for each new word. Makes it clearer for everybody, and particularly with any kind of specialist terms, or as I said, if English is your second language, it's always better to do so. So, and then the other thing that I'll just show you is how to actually add alt text to your social media image when you're actually going to post it. So let me go across here to Twitter. We'll just bear with me, and I will take questions at the end. I can see there's a few in the box there. Yeah, perfect. Let me share here now. So I'm going to tweet, and I'm just going to add my lovely image that you've seen here. Like I say, the editable file is available on the events webpage. If you do want to make your AT promise a little bit different, that you've learned something differently today than the one we've prepared, or if you wish, you can also share just directly from our Twitter. So in order to add alt text, which would mean that anyone, again, using a screen reader, which is, blind users would use that, some people with visual impairments, equally people with different neurodivergences use screen readers. So yeah, it's always better practice to add your alternative text to describe the image so that anybody who needs that description can avail of it. So in order to do that, you, as you saw me there, click the description, and I'm just going to describe this image. For your alt text, what you want to do is describe everything on the image, but try to be as kind of brief as you can. If you can think of it, if somebody was digesting all of this information via screen reader, it is already a little bit slower for them. So you want to make sure, yes, you're giving people access to all of the information and that you're including everybody, but that you don't give too much information to kind of create a disproportionate burden. So here we go. So the Gather logo, as you can see, is at the top of the image here, and it has bright blue and yellow elements. Then we go for our text. So text, day 1, my AT promise. Oops. Getting too carried away with my camel case here. My AT promise. And I will always tailor AT to the student in front of me. And then we're going to just describe this little graphical element that we have here. So graphic of some 3D glasses to keep with the 80s visual theme of the event. And then I'm just going to describe that the event hashtag gather ahead appears at the bottom. Perfect. So you can see that hasn't caused me any kind of great difficulty, and is now going to help anybody using a screen reader to be able to access the visual information that this image communicates. So we're going to just write our little post. Now coming to the end of hashtag gather ahead day 1. What's your hashtag to promise from what you've learned today? Perfect. So you might tweet back at us and let us know. So I'll have a quick look at any of our questions here. Perfect. That one's not for me. Cool. So that's great, folks. Thanks, Mil, for bearing with me there. And I hope you've picked up some tips about accessible social media. Trevor, we're always trying to make the connection between obviously accessibility, UDL, and assistive technology, as holistically they're all great for making sure that people with disabilities can be involved in all kind of walks of life in a meaningful way. So perfect.
I think that was like a quick masterclass in how to use PowerPoint in a creative way to make an image as well as be accessible. So I think that's great because, like that, once you understand alt text, even in a social media image, then, it's all transferable again to like making alt text available on an image in a Word document or in PowerPoint, or even like an online image that you find in a website. And like that, it is like once you know the concept, it's all transferable, and that's what I really love about this one.
Definitely. And I particularly found, when I started at Ahead, I was familiar with alt text, but it's not something that I knew to use on social media. And having learned it for social media context has actually helped me apply it to other areas of using alt text, because it's taught me to be brief and to be concise and to really think of, why am I using this image in this context, especially if it's, say, a photograph or a design element, or, what am I trying to get across with this image? And then that helps me to describe it with the alt text, because I know one thing that we always stress with our alternative text is, what is the message you're trying to get across? What are we trying to communicate with this? Especially if it's something a little bit more abstract, like be it a photograph, or you saw one of the presentations there had a photograph of kind of a beach. So it's always great to give that context. Why is this visual information here? What am I trying to get across to the audience? It makes your presentations better, not just for users who are using a screen reader, but the more you actually think through, why am I using this image, the better that is for the audience in general, because you're being more, you're kind of approaching it in a more thoughtful way.
Thank you so much. Well, that's brilliant. So I think we're going to wrap up today's session. So tomorrow, it's the format and all the names of the sessions are in the event site that Jess has put together. So big thanks for all that. So I am going to just quickly add the link to the website here. And then Jess, all those Zoom links again, they're all emailed to participants as well. So easy to find.
Exactly. So we'll be emailing you, as we did, all of the links for tomorrow and the next day. So we hope to see you again. Thanks, Mil, for joining us today.
Karen, thank you so much. Thank you, PCO, as well. Really
a big thanks to Karen for captioning today. Fantastic.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks so much, everyone. So if anybody has any questions, feel free. We just might stay back for a few minutes. Otherwise, have a great one. Thanks.
Perfect. I obviously covered all my bases, no questions, which is always a
plus.
plus.
That's great. And I'm literally just posting up my image now that I created in PowerPoint. So I'm just selecting it. Yeah, but that I love the way PowerPoint, you can make images like that. Oh, thanks, Jackie. Thanks a lot for coming along. Thanks, Carrie. No, it was great having you all here.
Lovely to see the mix as well between further education and higher education. It's great to kind of extend that conversation about assistive technology across the different contexts and fields. Yeah, because like even I think myself and Sue and ourselves, we were just mentioning just before the session about how, it's great that assistive technology practices, are so different, and they can be tailored to each institution or center. But the flip side is that, maybe then you don't get to see how other people kind of, facilitate or implement AT in other centers or institutions. So everyone's trying to make sense out of it in their own context. So one of the nice things about today is, you get to hear a little bit about like how TCD or UCD or like Kerry and Claire Limerick ETV are doing it as well, but in slightly different ways, but all kind of with varying degrees of UDL considerations in there as well. Definitely, and it's not even always just different ways, it's different assistive technologies. I mean, there's so many out there now, and I know in the last presentation it was mentioned, all technology is assistive technology. And that's the thing, like I know, Trevor, you've been working with assistive technology for years, and we're still always discovering new tools that can be used in different ways, and it's great. It's incredible for all the different, I mean, some of it's we talk about being an expert learner, as in being an expert in how you learn. Where I'm learning all the time that it's starting to change what I always thought I was a really visual learner, but I learn visually well for some things, and then audio works great for other things. Or it was like you were saying, you find singing to yourself helps you to, if you're trying to learn off a phrase. And I'd say that's, across the board for people, we learn different types of information in different ways. Yeah, especially it's great to have all these options. I know for me, the big question is like, who's out there telling everyone that all these options are available to students? Because that's the thing, it's like there's so much information out there that it can't be just one person. Like I think the role of the AT officer, can't do all this. Like there needs to be a more kind of bigger conversation, campus wide,
about whose role it is. And my gut feeling is that really it's probably like everyone's business to get to know a little bit about assistive technology. Like, you know, again, educators have there's so much to do already, so definitely don't want to pile up their workload. But regarding like even just modeling the use of AT in the classroom or signposting AT in the classroom, I think there might be just options there. And I think tomorrow I might briefly, quickly show that kind of paragraph that I make, that I encourage lecturers to put at the end of an assignment that just signposts, you know, the learner to different types of tools. William Nolan from UL. Thanks, William.
Definitely.
So
And
good.
even it can sometimes be just a matter of using the assistive technologies yourself in the classroom. I know some of the folks today mentioned that they actually do use these things themselves and that they do go through that with their students. And I think that's great because it's like that, you know, I know, Trevor, you often talk about near peer learning.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know, with an educator, it's not quite the same, but just seeing how someone else uses something can be a really great way to learn how to use it, because sometimes we get these demonstrations of these great tools and sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming. It's like, oh, how can I do this right? Or how can I use this properly? Rather than just, what can this do for me? How can this help me? And I think seeing someone else actually model, this is what I use it for, is really helpful.
Oh, yeah. Especially like I think students are so powerful to support other students, you know. So like if a student feels comfortable and safe enough to talk about their own assistive technology, so that's where this whole thing about disclosure and creating an inclusive environment and atmosphere, that when the students can share their AT experiences, like I think it can only do good things to raise awareness about AT in the student population and with staff as well, because students will talk to staff, but even just, you know, be a slightly gentle, persuasive way of encouraging other people to use AT as well, which is always good.
Definitely, definitely. So again, thanks for joining us all today. I think we'll leave it there and we'll restart these conversations about assistive technology tomorrow, and we hope to see you there. Thanks all.
Thanks so much, Jess. Okay.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.